Everybody, thanks for watching, and welcome to basically part two of my video on this whole coronavirus thing. And I really wanted to get into the economy part of this and how 5G is really going to change the economy coming forward and what that really entails, and how we can clear up a lot of the misconceptions about 5G and what's actually going on versus what the media is talking about and the way they're trying to make Trump look versus 5G in the media. But I want to elaborate a little bit more on the coronavirus and get you guys to understand how more so it's crazy that we've been seeing the signs, and we've been seeing a lot about coronavirus, and we've been hearing a lot about viruses as far as one that can affect us globally, from Obama to Bill Gates, and a lot of people were speaking out about the potential of a global pandemic. But now you understand, seeing the video, how when you look at a lot of those Lysol aerosol cans, you understand now why you saw the whole coronavirus and rhinovirus. I have products in here at home that show you, just talking about the rhinovirus and coronavirus, because that's what they cause. And a lot of these other cleaning products actually, helps to get rid of the virus. So you have like Dettol, that's what I use here, and it tells you clear as day. It will basically stop those viruses from happening. You don't have any type of fumes or any type of aerosols that will spray any metals or anything that's going to cause you to self detoxify and cause the common cold. So it's a lot of stuff out there, but it makes sense now why a lot of people was talking about why you see the human rhinovirus on a lot of these cleaning products from back in the day. Now you understand why. So again, I was talking about Batman, and how, and Batman was the first place. Batman the Dark Knight was when we first seen him put out that type of technology with sonar, where he could basically map the environment around him. Also, I talked about with Batman how Bane and a whole thing with Gotham, make Gotham great again, that whole slogan. Remember in Batman, the Dark Knight Rises, what happened? It was sports. Sports got stopped. He stopped the whole sporting event so he could basically quarantine everybody in that movie. And it's a lot of stuff that they're showing us in Batman as well that I wish I had more time to get into. But we can see, first of all, the movie is about a dude dressed like a bat, human bat. So, humans and bats have this whole connection with the coronavirus, and it's weird that it's in a movie called Batman, and we have this whole epidemic with involving a bat, that we find the similarities between that movie, that Batman movie, and this whole virus. But this is how they put information out here, and how they tell us what they're going to do. As I told you guys, they have to tell us. They have to put out there what they're going to do. And we have been seeing it. A lot of us have been talking about it for decades. And now a lot of people are starting to listen. A lot of people is, I've been contacted by people I haven't talked to in a long time about this type of information. A lot of people who was able to see the video before it was taken down, saw the video, and everybody really agrees on the information and wanted more information. But it's a lot you got to understand about how they've been preparing us for this whole thing. And you guys got to really understand what they have been doing to us. The cat's out the bag on a whole making you sick every year thing. And I hope I brought that to a lot of you guys' consciousness about every year, right around the time you have cold and flu season, if you get sick, now you understand how to prevent that and to watch out for that. And now that that is raised in your consciousness, you will notice that you'll get less sick. You won't get sick as much as people who are outside breathing in all those fumes, all those metals. So if it's raining out, I'm telling you, if they spraying and it start raining later on, or if it gets really windy, don't go outside. I don't care when this shit is over. If you want to stay healthy, don't go out. The rain is so bad. I mean, I don't know if you guys, I'm old enough, and who knows, they probably were spraying it back then. But honestly, I remember when it rained and my car didn't get as dirty as it does. Like, what is it about the rain that after it rains, it leaves these little spots on your car? I mean, it's crazy. It tells you it's something in the rain. And then you got to remember how it was keeping people from, distilling rainwater, keeping people from collecting rainwater and drinking it. Remember that whole thing. So we understand now why they was doing that and keeping people and making it illegal in certain towns for people to collect rainwater. You would think if it's natural rainwater, people can collect it and it shouldn't be a problem. But now you understand why, because, you know, people can get sick from that. But we got to understand they've been preparing us for a while for this whole thing. And it wasn't just Bill Gates that came out and talked about this before. Remember, Obama had a lot to say about the coming pandemic before. So they've been preparing us, you know, for a while for this. And a lot of people knew what was coming. We know about the senators that basically sold their stock in hotels and hospitality chains. And a lot of people got rich off of what happened and what's going on here early. So they already know. They was already preparing us for this. And the pharmaceutical companies are going to make billions of dollars off of this whole thing. And a lot of people who are still believing in this mess and believing the news are going to get sick. And there's a lot of people still dying from this. And I'm seeing more and more people post on Facebook about somebody they know who died from this, because, as I said, it's real, but it's from your own body triggering this stuff and causing people to have massive detoxification, which is causing pneumonia. And if you're sickly or you have, you know, bad, you know, health or poor health, you're going to die from it. And who knows what they've done to you once you get to the hospital. We're seeing this virus seemingly attack Black people more than anybody else. And you heard the guy, I forget his name, from New York, come out and speak about this and say, you know, more Black people are dying from this than anybody else. And that's not something that, you know, we should be shocked about. And it's one of those things where you're going to have Black people looking at it and they're going to say, well, this was designed to kill Black people. You had a lot of people before they started coming out and saying, well, this was designed to kill white people. But even more so, you got to understand, we are a lot more protected from this. It's seemingly killing more white folks than Black folks. Trust me on that. A lot of Black people getting it. But you want to put those numbers out there and say that and pound home on that so people can understand that it's geared to, it's just to keep the racial tension going in the midst of all of this stuff. But if you're from the hood and you know, you Black, you know a lot of Black people, how many of your friends is sick and have it? I mean, you got to look at it from that point of view. How many people that you know that's Black that actually has it? And if the numbers were the way they saying, you would think more people would be dying from it. But their estimates is only 13,000 people that die from it. So it's like, I believe, like 200 and something thousand people in America that cases, or 400,000 cases or something like that. And only 13,000 people have died from it. Like my best friend, he recovered from it. He's home, he's fine, he's doing good now. But a lot of people are not, and we don't really know the numbers. And as I said before in the first video, you got to look at the fact that you have still every year about 60,000 people always coming into the hospital, always coming in there for regular influenza. You have thousands of people, almost 1 million people a year in America die of influenza. And, you know, how can they include those numbers in with the coronavirus deaths? So it's all they doing. It's the same crap. But we understand now why before this happened, you know, they got rid of Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi's gone. Remember, it was like 60 other natural herbalists that disappeared and died right after Dr. Sebi. You understand, you know, not too long ago, we had Nipsey die, who was putting on a documentary on the whole thing. And then now we see the previews for Nick Cannon's documentary on Dr. Sebi when it's too late. You know, it's too late. They already hatched this plan. And now when this is going on, we're seeing, you know, previews for the documentary. So we know this was the reason behind all of that, you know, to have somebody like Dr. Sebi and these herbalists out here to tell you that, one, this is some bullshit, and that what's happening is a natural occurrence in the body. Somebody with a lot more credentials or a lot more, let's say, reach than me can come out and say, this is this, this is that, and people need to chill out. And you have somebody that's a proven healer that has healed people of AIDS and all kinds of stuff, like Dr. Sebi, who could come out and say, well, this is some bullshit. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why they got rid of him. And again, this is not something that they didn't know about. This was planned years in advance. This is what they knew was coming when you start to look at and research everything that's going to be coming with 5G, which we're going to get into in this video, which is crazy. It's a lot of stuff. And it's going to call into question a lot of the stuff the news has been reporting that's clearly bullshit. So now you just pay attention to everything that we're hearing, the whole narrative. One, remember, before this happened, you had the whole comparisons between Trump and Hitler. They kept showing them two together. When you understand what's happening today, even the words, the terminology that we're using, essential workers. If you've seen Schindler's List, then you understand all this is all Nazi talk. This is all Nazi Germany shit that we're witnessing that's going on. It's extermination, I should say, that's happening in a way that it was in Nazi Germany. So you have Trump, who they equating with Hitler, and you have this whole thing where, they were talking about with the Jews in the concentration camps, essential workers who can be essential to the war efforts, and so on and so forth. And we're throwing that word out today, essential workers, non-essential workers, same stuff. What did they do in Nazi Germany? They killed the old people. If you was old or you was crippled or sick, they shot you in the head, buried you. And that's what they was doing, getting rid of the weak. They couldn't use you to benefit the economy or benefit them, the war effort in any way. So you was useless. And Schindler's List, remember the guy with the one arm? He was trying to shovel snow, and it was like, well, you can't even shovel snow. You got one arm. They blew his brains out. And this is the whole thing we're seeing there. This is deliberately done every year, even before this happened, to get rid of the old people, to get rid of weak. We're talking about population decreasing. They've been doing it not in just this way, but in a number of ways. So a lot of you guys got to really pay attention to the cosmetics that you use in women, the stuff they put in your faces, because a lot of that causes sicknesses. It causes you to get colds and so on and so forth. But as I said, if you're a person who is in good shape, you're up on your diet, you're up on your health, your body, this is not going to affect you. It's not going to affect you. They can try to trigger it all they want. But if you're not out in this stuff for too long, and I would recommend staying out of the rain. Don't let that stuff touch your bare skin and let you get wet too much in this. Who knows what's in this stuff? Your skin absorbs that. Those metals get into you and you're going to detoxify, and it's not going to be good. But this is what they're doing. This is what they're triggering. And they're getting rid of a lot of homeless people, a lot of old people, a lot of people that got poor health, people that's not essential. So we can see essential to, their whole thing. But we can see what's happening and how they're using this, and the death numbers that they're giving us could be possibly way more than what they're saying, to be honest. So we don't know, but we know that they've been making us sick and they're keeping us sick, and this whole thing is about keeping you from going outside. I mean, it's a lot to this that we got to understand. Like when you start to dig into the whole point that they can just make you sick and make you self-detoxify, and you think that's your body's own natural thing, or we've been thinking for years, you caught a cold, you got sick, you touched something, you caught some germs and you got sick. When they've been putting stuff, remember, it's only 11 companies that basically make everything that we use. 11 companies, they make everything. So we're talking about these companies getting together and putting stuff in our products to trigger us to detoxify, so the pharmaceutical companies they also own can make money. So they triple and quadruple dipping off of the products. They're making money. The meat, they're making money. They're making money off of the freaking pharmaceuticals, and it's just so much money. And then meanwhile, we're paying taxes. I mean, they're milking us. They're milking us, and it's a whole process that's been going on for decades that they have been using, and we have been just thinking that everything is okay. And a lot of people falling for it, and a lot of people thinking that they're sick, and it's something that's natural as far as how they got sick, but it's something that's triggered within you to cause you to detoxify from these chemicals and the stuff that they're using. So again, if you eating clean and you eating healthy, this is something that should not happen. The amount of detoxification that will happen in your body during that process, you would basically poop out. It would come out as waste, and you'll sweat it out if you're working out. It'll sweat out through your pores. There's a lot of other ways that you can get rid of it. That's why when you have the flu, I mean, you're cold on the inside, the outside you're burning up, because it's like it's trying to sweat this virus out. So now to get into how this is going to really change our world, again, you got to go back and look at World War II and what that whole thing was about. We're talking about a global change that happened back then in the 40s, and it was a big thing, as big as this is now. So even though there wasn't quarantine, if you remember, you go back to Cold War times and World War II and all the stuff that was going on. Remember, kids had to go to school with freaking gas masks. They had oxygen masks and gas masks. They had a whole drills where they had to hide under the freaking desk in case bombs fell, because they was expecting an impending attack from, the Russians, from the Soviet Union. So remember, like in the 40s, they went through some stuff. Like we quarantine right now, but this is not the first time the world has had to, well, America at least, had to basically brace themselves for something major that was coming as a country and change their lives as a country for something that was, about to happen. So, in the 40s and during the Cold War and everything like that, it was crazy. It was, panic all the time, especially when you have the prospect of nuclear war. The whole thing where, damn, we can all die. I mean, it's way worse than now. I mean, we're quarantined and all, but we don't have the threat of a nuclear bomb being dropped and just wiping out the whole city and killing everybody. Remember, they used to show those videos of what can happen and how a nuclear weapon can do this and that, and scared the hell out of people. So this is not the first time, but we got to go back to Nazi Germany, World War II, and remember that out of World War II, there was a new world order in Europe. Before World War II, we remember the countries were separated. I've talked about this before, and there was borders. You had to go, cross borders, even still today, but now you can pass without it being a big deal. Like if you are a citizen of Germany, you could be a citizen of Sweden, so on and so forth. Before World War II, it wasn't that way. So now, after World War II, it basically was a new world order in Europe. So out of World War II, you had, World War II ended, I believe it was May 1945. The next month, June 1945, you had the formation of the United Nations. And the United Nations was basically like, it's basically like the New World Order, you might as well say. And you have 3 years later, Israel becomes a nation. And then, the world basically changes in a major way, during this process out of World War II. And this is what we're going to be seeing after this. When this is over, I see a lot of stuff going up and people saying the world is going to be different. Don't expect the world to be the same when we get out of it. The world is going to be the same when we come out of it. It's not going to be the same in the sense that there's going to be basically, better things coming for us. The bad part is not really going to be known as much to us, to make it clear. Like, we're going to come out of this, and like I said, the worst thing that could possibly happen, not the worst thing, but one of the worst things that's probably going to happen is probably mandatory vaccinations for kids. I don't see it happening for adults to get back in school, and they probably require it at certain jobs and stuff like that. And it's just going to be to cover up. It's just going to be one to stop the detoxification process from all the shit they've been spraying on us over the last few months. That's going to be the main reason for that. So you're going to have that. You're going to probably have, or what's happening with, matter of fact, we'll get into this in a little bit, one of the reasons why they need all these businesses to close. But remember, out of World War II, we had this big change. Out of this, we're going to have a big change as far as, our daily life, business-wise, economically, schools. It's going to be a 5G change. It's going to push us into a better, easier, life, but we're going to lose a lot in the process. But again, all of this coronavirus stuff is a cover up for 5G, to cover up what they're doing with 5G as far as getting this stuff together. And as I said, this began in China. Now, how many of you know what's been happening in China before this? How many people know what's been going on in China, around the time all this began, and it hasn't stopped, really? So you had in China, basically war. Almost civil war in China, Hong Kong specifically, for a few reasons. So now you see all that going on. I understand this was last year, the end of last year, before all of this started, about extradition. And with the extradition law that they passed, what was essentially going to happen was they will be able to basically target anybody in Hong Kong as a potential terrorist or as a potential person of interest and extradite them to China to face prosecution for whatever reason, or to face investigation where they can just hold you and detain you until they figure out that you cool. Like, who want to go through that? But after that, or during that time, if you guys remember, they passed a law basically banning the mask. The mask that everybody's wearing right now. They've been wearing them in China for years because China's air quality is so horrible. And you got to remember, we're talking about, they are the #1 producer in the world. They produce everything. They have all the manufacturing plants. There's so much pollution, and air pollution over there is crazy. So they've been wearing the mask for a while, but then they banned them in Hong Kong, right? And the reason why they banned them is because people figured out, well, they couldn't do facial recognition, and they couldn't scan people's faces with those masks on, So they banned them, and the people caught on. And if you remember, they were showing the videos with them cutting down the 5G towers and cutting down the street lights with video cameras that were scanning them. And a lot of people put out the video saying that they was tearing down the 5G towers because they was making people sick, but that's the real reason why they was tearing them down. You have a lot of people that's woke in Hong Kong that's really against what's going on. And we gotta look to China to figure this stuff out. Because remember, 5G began with them, the virus began with them. I mean, it's too much of a coincidence, right? Something gotta be up. So 5G began with them, you have freaking virus begin with them, you have all this stuff going on. And they're looking at this and saying, they're getting caught up in the hype. And it's one of the reasons why I can understand why a lot of people look at Trump as being a good guy in this whole thing, because they get caught up in the hype as well. Because you have Trump basically going against China, pointing to China. But you got to understand, this is WWE, smoke and mirrors, as I will show and prove to you in this video what's actually going on. So you have to think about it. I mean, you don't become a president unless you win. It's like, I don't understand how people don't get that by now. They're not going to put somebody in there to basically dethrone hundreds of years of their reign, of their work. Nobody's going to get and sit in that seat that's going to do anything to benefit the people. It's going to be to get absolute control and to finish the agenda. That's Trump's job. His job now is to execute this 5G thing. Just like Obama's job was to stand by and allow black people to be killed, to keep this race thing going on while they go and rape Africa and the other Middle Eastern countries over there of their land and oil and natural resources, and build more bases and do everything that they did. And every president has an agenda. They have a job they got to complete during their administration. And, if they do a good job, they get another term. If not, they'll get them out of there if the public start to see through them. Now, with Trump, who knows what's going to happen? But we got to look at this and understand that they will not waste a crisis. They're going to try to get everything they can get out of this situation. And it's going to really depend on the people and our reaction as to what is going to actually happen. So there's a lot of people waking up to what's going on. But again, we got to look to China, because China is a big key in what's going on. Now, one of the main reasons why we got to really look at China, what's going on, especially with the protesters, because a lot of the protesters have it in their heads that somehow Trump can come and save them and basically liberate them from mainland China. So in Hong Kong, they're actually calling for Trump to help come and liberate them and so on and so forth. And we got to watch that and be careful with that whole thing, because that's a way that we can use this whole situation to start a war and go into China, go into Hong Kong, and basically, stir up some crap to basically pass some bullshit laws over here. So we got to look at that whole thing and pay attention, because they actually believe that Trump is against China when it's bullshit. It's smoke and mirrors, as I will show you. And you got to remember, he spoke out about the Uyghur things. And because of what was happening with the Uyghurs, as I put a video out on YouTube, if you guys seen it, about the Uyghurs. And basically, real quick, if you didn't see the video, the Uyghurs are the people that LeBron James spoke out about. They basically detained these people in China to basically hold them to see who they was, if they spies or what have you. What the powers that be did was take a bunch of people from Turkey, decades ago, and plant them in China and have them basically breed with the people and have kids and set up businesses and so on and so forth. And then the Chinese caught on to the fact that, you're having all these countries that's been destabilized, one common thing, Islam. So you have the rise of Islam in China that's been going on, and they're looking at it, once they find out where these people came from and who these people are, they're looking at it as, every time you have this Muslim presence in the country becomes destabilized, with Islam, and there's an uprising, and there's an issue, and eventually America steps in. So they blew the whistle off of that. And now this is a whole other thing that's happening with this surveillance thing and everything that's happening with the people in Hong Kong. But they're looking at it and saying, America, Trump specifically, is against what's happening in China, what's happening to the people. He's on our side. He's a good guy. And they've been calling for Trump to basically come in and liberate them from mainland China, because I don't know if y'all know, mainland China has some crazy, weird rules. They have this whole point system with credit. If you have low points, it's like having low credit, but you can't fly if you got low points. There's certain stuff you can't buy. You can't even buy a first class ticket if you're not at a certain status. It's super petty and super It's communism, real talk. It's just crazy, the system that they have in mainland China, that of course in Hong Kong, they're more open, as you talked about. Remember, Britain had control of them, turned over power back to them in 97. And the people flourished under Britain's control because they had freedom as entrepreneurs to grow and create businesses, which is why Hong Kong is thriving today and is a major metropolis over there, because the people are more open-minded. They're more Americanized. They are required to speak English, 3 languages, as you said, by a certain age. It's the same thing in Sweden, but they're more open to change, and they're not set in their ways with a lot of stuff. So they're more rebellious than I'll say even us, and you'll be hard pressed to find 100,000, a million Americans that's going to go out on the street to protest extradition or to protest something like this. But these people are fighting and going to war, as you can see, with these officials, with people, Chinese Hong Kong police. And it's been going on for a long time, and it's been not really talked about a lot because they're trying to keep it hush. But you had this long, drawn out fight that's been happening, and then you had, boom, COVID-19. COVID-19 comes in, now these people in the house. So all this chaos and stuff that you've been seeing in the video is just quiet now. And the main people that's in trouble is the restaurants, the stores, because they've been basically shut down for months before this even happened, because the streets was full of protesters. And it's another reason why this stuff happened, because once they got the protesters out of there, because they probably was trying to figure out, how the hell are we going to get rid of these protesters? How are we going to get these people to calm down when they, for months, every day, is fighting? So you had the virus. Trump, looking at what's happening in Hong Kong, decides around the same time, let me go ahead and protect 5G. You have people already talking against it, but then you can see what's happening in Hong Kong, where these people are cutting down the towers and basically breaking them. So then now let's pass a law to where I can legally mobilize military and police to stop against anybody that's going to be fighting against 5G. Now, I don't know if you've been seeing, but you have a bunch of people out there protesting with 5G signs and stop 5G, because a lot of them actually believe that it's the cause of the sickness. But even before this, people was out there with signs saying no 5G and protesting against 5G. I was seeing them everywhere. And one of the things that I automatically picked up on when I was seeing it was the fact that, this is going to give them a lot of capability to spy. And as I said to people that's, on the whole market of the beast thing and think that this is somehow a way to microchip us, they don't need to. 5G is going to take care of that. And even without 5G, you got to remember, your fingerprints is unique to you. Your retina is unique to you. DNA is unique to you. I mean, if they really wanted to, they can have everything run off fingerprints and retinal scans. Facial recognition is what they're going to use. They're going to use the retinal scan. They're going to just use your voice as well to basically, to ID you. And then if you got a phone, which every grown up does, that's of any importance, that's doing anything, you got a phone. So it's no need to put a chip in a person when you're walking, you're tracked, period. This whole thing, again, is about testing that equipment, getting it up and testing it. But more than that, as we'll get into later on in the video. So they're looking at Trump to basically help them out. And we got to look at this whole thing, as I said, and understand that if you have that many people out there protesting, and let's just say if we really were to go to war with China, that would be the perfect use, perfect situation to use this right here. Because then if they actually want to go to war and fight, they can basically, arm those protesters to go and fight against the Chinese, which is something you got to look at as possibly happening, they being armed. Now, if that was really a thing that could possibly happen, it would also make sense why nobody can fly into China right now. Somehow Robert Kraft was able to fly there and get masks and bring them back, which I don't understand that whole thing. But, supposed to be in this whole war with them, and somehow, Robert Kraft, football owner, because China's probably manufacturing some shit for him, who knows, was able to fly there and get masks where nobody else could and bring back up 1 million masks. So we got to look at this stuff. Understand, like I said, smoke and mirrors. A lot of this stuff is going to be like, well, it seems like this. And remember, they're using the media, the news, to project it as such. But you got to look underline and then ask yourself the question, if this is that way, then why is this that way? And the biggest thing is, the fuck we got to be in the house for? And that's the big one. That's the one you got to look at. There has to be a major reason why we do want us just in the house. Like, what is that? Businesses shut down. And you got to remember, essentially, you got to eat. You got to eat. But the stuff that's open is what needs to be open. So what's closed? And you got to think about it. It's a lot of government buildings, schools, important stuff that's going to be needing this 5G technology. We'll get into this in a second, but you got to understand where this is stemming from and what they're trying to do. And this gets into the whole situation with Trump and Huawei. And Huawei is basically the creator of 5G. And they have the monopoly on 5G and its installation. And they've been putting 5G towers everywhere all over the globe right now. But Trump, as you remember, came out and said, well, they're spying on us. And there's been a lot of talk about what Huawei is doing and been doing, over the last few months. And you have Trump basically saying, he's trying to protect us from being spied on, the whole 5G with Huawei and everything like that. But this is the important stuff. You got to understand what's really taking place. But let's start here. It says, and this is from the New Yorker. This is important right here. Just to understand what was taking place initially. And it says, Huawei, a Chinese manufacturer of consumer electronics and telecommunications equipment, is currently the global leader in 5G technology. Founded in the 80s by Ren Zhengfei, an engineer who began his career in the People's Liberation Army. Huawei has been accused by cybersecurity experts and politicians, most notably Donald Trump, of being a conduit to Chinese intelligence. In an op-ed in the Washington Post, the Republican senators Tom Cotton of Arkansas and John Cornyn of Texas characterized the company, which is funded with subsidies from the Chinese government, as a Trojan horse that could give China effective control of the digital commanding heights. They tell the story of the African Union, which installed Huawei servers in its headquarters in Addis Ababa, only to discover that those servers had been sending sensitive data back to China every evening. Although Huawei vigorously denies that it is an agent of the Chinese government, the senators pointed out the company is subject to a Chinese law that requires companies to cooperate with the state intelligence apparatus. The Times of London reported that the CIA has evidence that Huawei has taken money from the PLA, which is the People Liberation Army, as well as from branches of the Chinese intelligence service. Australia, Japan, and New Zealand have joined with the United States in banning Huawei hardware from their networks. Now, it was easy, we're going to see in a second, for them to get these couple little countries to join in, but you'll see why they did that. And let's skip here. Now it says, deploying millions of wireless relays so close to one another and therefore to our bodies has elicited its own concerns. 2 years ago, 180 scientists and doctors from 36 countries appealed to the European Union for a moratorium on 5G adoption until the effects of the expected increase in low-level radiation were studied. In February, Senators Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, took both the FCC and FDA to task for pushing ahead with 5G without assessing its health risk. But kind of flying blind here. He concluded a system built on millions of cell relay antennas and sensors also offers previously unthinkable surveillance potential. Telecom companies already sell location data to marketers, and law enforcement has used similar data to track protesters. 5G will catalog exactly where someone has come from. Why they want you at home? They want to know exactly where you're coming from, where they're going, and what they're doing. And as I said, understand why you guys keep getting these census. You got census in the mail, census commercials already now because they want to know who lives where. To give one made-up example, Steve Bellavin, a computer science professor at Columbia University, told Wall Street Journal, might a pollution sensor detect cigarette smoke or vaping, while a Bluetooth receiver picks up the identities of nearby phones. Insurance companies might be interested. Paired with facial recognition and artificial intelligence, the data streams and location capabilities of 5G will make anonymity a historical artifact. And China, which has installed 350,000 5G relays, about 10 times more than US. And this is basically, I believe this last year or 2 years ago. So we have, who knows how many there are now. Enhanced geolocation coupled with an expansive network of surveillance cameras, each equipped with facial recognition technology, has enabled authorities to track and subordinate the country's 11 million Uyghur Muslims. According to the Times, the practice makes China a pioneer in applying next-generation technology to watch its people, potentially ushering in a new era of automated racism. And it says here, the United States is not there yet and may never be. And that's just to make you feel comfortable, but they're getting there. But as 5G begins to be rolled out, the pressure to capture and capitalize on new streams of data from individual businesses and governments will only grow more intense. Building safeguards into the system seems like an obvious and necessary goal. Spalding is now a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and also advises corporations and other agencies on the cybersecurity threats posted by China. But he warns the danger is not limited to a single nation state. What is essential to democracy is allowing totalitarian regimes or any government full knowledge of everything you do at all times, he said, because the tendency is always going to be to want to regulate how you think, how you act, what you do. The problem is that most people don't think very hard about what that world would look like. So what they're trying to do is basically patriotize 5G. They're going to try to make it like this is a race. You know, this is like the whole space race thing, and this whole thing is like us basically having to compete with a foreign country. We got to compete with China, and Trump is basically trying to protect us and protect security and so on and so forth, and make people, you know, competitive about the whole situation, as to where, you know, you have so many people jumping on board with 5G and America apart, like, you know, we're going to do our own thing. And it's because of national security reasons. But the more and more people start to read about 5G, the more they see the fact that this is going to be very invasive and that they shouldn't want it. And they're trying to cover the whole thing up with the virus and cover the whole thing up with the fact that it's a matter of national security and that we need to do this and be ahead of China, because this whole thing is about who is going to get 5G first and who is going to control it. And whoever controls it controls the world, and they can regulate internet all over the world. They can, you know, mess with a country's internet and cyber attacks and so on and so forth. And we're going to hear that whole thing a lot about cyber attacks and cyber terrorism and so on and so forth, and anything that they need to use to somehow either cause a war or to get through this part of their agenda to get people to accept what's happening until, you know, they're done. So we got to look at the whole thing and understand, one, it's smoke and mirrors, as I said. You don't become the president if you go against the agenda of the powers that be. Everything he has done is part of their agenda, plain and simple. The whole back and forth you keep seeing in the media between Trump and the media, as if the media is against him. And you got to understand the stage. The stuff is all the way it's supposed to be. He is specifically saying stuff that is contradictory, and it don't matter. So even if he says to the president, well, President, you said this, Trump is never wrong. He never going to admit he's wrong. Whenever they catch him, I don't know what he's talking about. Or he'll tell somebody else or ask them the question, but he doesn't admit that he's wrong. So you have a president that's basically saying, I don't care what you say. If you get me in a lie, you say I said something, I'm just going to say, so what? I mean, what are you going to do? You're just a reporter. But make no mistake, the media in on it. They've been talking about us banning Huawei. You've been seeing that a lot. Huawei being banned and Trump banning Huawei and so on and so forth, making it as if Trump is trying to protect us from this whole cybersecurity and this invasion of privacy and so on and so forth. But it says here, the United States has once again pushed back the date when its full ban on doing business with Huawei will take effect. The Department of Commerce announced this week, instead of ending on April 1st, the temporary general license, which is what's allowing companies to still do business with Huawei, will now expire after May 15th. At the same time, the department is also asking for public input on this temporary license, including whether it needs to be changed or extended further. For those keeping track, this is technically the fourth extension to the temporary license that the U.S. government has granted. After initially banning U.S. companies from doing business with Huawei back in May over concerns that the Chinese government could use the company to spy on Americans, the Commerce Department was quick to issue a temporary 3-month license to allow Huawei to continue to support its phones and networking equipment. It then extended this license for another 90 days last August, November, and then for an additional 45 days in February of this year. So as I said, smoke and mirrors. It's bullshit. Huawei is here building towers, just like they're building towers everywhere else. We stay and get rid of them. If this was a matter of national security, right? Think about what it's saying. We're reading all this stuff, and they supposedly caught them in Africa, spying and sending back sensitive information. We're talking about Americans. We're talking about Huawei. This phone has been here for a long time, and so many people have it. And it has so many technology licenses and so many technology deals and jobs here in America, and a lot of people depend on it. So you're talking about if it was a real matter of national security, they would have been got rid of it. And there's a lot of reasons why they can't just get rid of it because of those reasons. A lot of stuff would fail. There's a lot of businesses that would lose a lot of money. But the main reason is because it's here building towers.